I last reviewed Fortnite for Mac the day it was released, back on the 25th of July 2017, and since then the game has gone through some dramatic changes, i.e. with the obvious addition of the Battle Royale mode. This review is not going to go into what the game offers story-wise or gameplay, because by now you should already know what it offers. Instead, this review will show you where the support for Fortnite on macOS currently stands, and which Mac models you should run this game on. Firstly, let's talk about macOS support for Fortnite. Fortnite has had some major problems with the macOS version. The main issue back in early 2018 was that it was plagued by ridiculous frame rate drops that completely ruined the gaming experience. In addition, Macs with integrated graphics cards would occasionally see some bizarre bugs like textures missing or sound being distorted. Thankfully, most of these issues are long gone. However, I still noticed a texture issue with the water, and the game still suffers from very long load times. However, usually it takes like 5 minutes or up to 10 minutes to join a game, and then after that, you join pretty much instantly. It's just always the first time you're joining a game. I don't know what that is, but it hasn't gone yet. But overall, Fortnite runs somewhat more stable now compared to early 2018. Next, before we dive into the benchmarks, let's make sure your Mac meets Fortnite's minimum system requirements. You should be running macOS 10.13.6 High Sierra or later. You are going to need a processor that is a 2.4 GHz Intel Core i3. You will only need apparently 4 GB of RAM, and your video graphics should be Intel HD 4000 or Intel Iris Pro 5200. But your Mac must also support the Metal API, which is all Macs from 2012 and above, which means you can't run Fortnite on Macs from 2012 and below, which most of you already know. While looking at these requirements, in theory, all Macs from 2012 or newer have the ability to play Fortnite at some capacity, although I would go as far to say these system requirements are far from accurate and require a much more high-end Mac to run well, as you will soon find out. For this video, I personally benchmarked Fortnite on 3 different Mac models: a late 2015 5K iMac, a 2017 MacBook, and a 2018 15-inch MacBook Pro. However, I collaborated with the biggest Mac gaming website out there, MacGamerHQ. Together, we managed to test the game on more than 24 Macs with the help of other Mac gamer submissions. We tested Fortnite on the low preset setting, 1280 by 800 resolution, 100% 3D resolution. We had everything on the low quality preset, and VSync was off. Firstly, results for high-end Macs with dedicated graphics. 90 FPS on a 2018 15-inch MacBook Pro, which is my MacBook. Otherwise, it could get around 120 FPS on the 2018 15-inch MacBook Pro with a Blackmagic eGPU. Next, 93 FPS on a iMac 4K 21.5-inch from 2017, and 88 FPS on an iMac 5K 27-inch from late 2015, and that one's mine. If you have a high-end Mac with a dedicated graphics like an iMac or a 15-inch MacBook Pro, you can play Fortnite just fine. In fact, you should be able to play in medium settings at 1080p. While you can play in high, it might not be worth it, as your frame rate could drop to around the 30s, and this game is much better with an FPS of around 40. Now for recent entry-level Macs with integrated graphics, we got 24 FPS on a 2015 13-inch MacBook Air, 60 FPS on a 13-inch 2017 MacBook Pro, 50 FPS on a 2016 13-inch MacBook Pro, and 28 FPS on a 2017 MacBook, which is my one. The majority of you watching will be in this category. For these machines, you most likely won't be able to play above the settings previously stated, which is about 720p at low settings. If you own a MacBook Air or a standard MacBook, I would not even consider playing Fortnite on it. It's just not worth it for the limited performance. Even on a 2018 MacBook Air, I would not even suggest playing it on that. However, for 13-inch MacBook Pros, it's perfectly playable at low settings. You can try lowering the 3D resolution on these machines to get increased FPS. However, I would not go below 66% as the game begins to look disgusting. And lastly, for older Macs which either have a recent or powerful graphics card, we've got 25 FPS on a 2012 Mac Mini, 23 FPS on a 2013 13-inch MacBook Pro, and 45 FPS on a 2013 21-inch iMac. So, don't bother playing Fortnite on these machines, as they will struggle to get above 40 FPS. Unless you have an older Mac with a dedicated graphics card, then you probably can play, but still, it's risky. The results. If we take all Macs as an example of Fortnite's performance, it is poor. For MacBook Pros and iMacs from 2016 onwards, Fortnite will run fine for you. However, if you plan to run Fortnite on a MacBook Air or a Mac Mini, performance will be very limited and not enjoyable. For older Macs from 2015 or older, they won't be able to run it well either unless they have dedicated graphics. Basically, if you can't get the game to run at 40 FPS or over at 720p, I would skip Fortnite. Don't bother trying to make the game run at the lowest possible settings and a bizarre low resolution, because at that point, gameplay will suffer. And how can you be effective if you can't even distinguish faraway enemies from trees? If your Mac can't run Fortnite, it can't run Fortnite, full stop. You have plenty of other platforms to play Fortnite on, i.e. Windows PC, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and even on mobile. Also, the game is completely free to play. If you want to test if your Mac can run Fortnite, download it and see for yourself. You won't lose anything. And that's basically it. I hope this video has helped you to see which Mac models you should run Fortnite on and where the support for the game currently stands. For a more detailed look into Fortnite's Mac performance, I highly suggest you look towards Mac Gamer HQ's article, which goes way more into depth than this video has. It is linked in the description. It is highly suggested that you have a look. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.